Hey, welcome to Mooney Reads. My name is Beck, and today I'll be talking about the books that I plan on reading in the month of February. This month, I plan on participating in 3 different readathons, on top of the Buzzwordathon, and then I'll be participating in a book club and doing a buddy read. So it's going to be a pretty full month. I know I talked about making smaller TBRs. Clearly I'm not doing a very good job at that, but February is my birthday month, and I can do what I want. So, this is what this month is going to look like. So, I'm going to start off by talking about the buddy read that I'm going to be doing. I will be reading Captive Genders, Trans Embodiment in the Prison Industrial Complex with Brianna from Brianna's Library. I'm thinking this is going to take us longer than February, but we're starting it this month. I've wanted to read this book for a while, and I was finally able to get a copy because it was on sale. I posted about it on my Instagram story, and they messaged me and said that they got it too. So we decided to buddy read it together. I'm really looking forward to reading this and to getting to hear what Brianna has to say about it as well. So far as readathons go, I'm going to be participating in the Blackathon, the Blacklit Challenge, and VaLITines. One of the books that I'm going to be doing for these also goes for the Buzzwordathon, but I'll talk about that when I get to it. The first readathon that I'm going to talk about is the Blackathon. For this readathon, there are 3 different teams you can pick from. There's Team Sci-Fi Fantasy, Team Thriller Horror, and then Team Contemporary Literature Nonfiction. I am going to be doing the prompts for Team Contemporary. There are 3 different prompts, and on top of these, they have also challenged us to pick at least one that is not set in the US or UK. So the first prompt for Contemporary is Maisie Card, a book that takes place over a character's lifespan or is intergenerational. And for that, I'm going to be reading Assata, an autobiography by Assata Shakut. Since this is an autobiography, it looks at her whole life. It's mostly framed about one specific instance, when she was shot by a police officer and framed for killing one of the other police officers. But it goes back between that instance and, like, throughout her whole life. So you get her childhood story as well. I originally started reading it in, 2019 and put it down for no real reason. I am going to get to it this month. If I'm not at least halfway through this book by the end of the month, please nicely cyberbully me because I need to get this done. It was a really great read getting into it, but it is quite intense. So that's the first book that I have for the Blackathon. The next prompt is Patsy. 2 queer characters embark on a journey together. Bonus points if it's a road trip. And for this, I am going with the prompt's namesake, Patsy. I'm going to be listening to this on audiobook. I'm not super clear on the plot of the story. I know that the character is from the Caribbean, and I think they are immigrating to the United States or thinking about immigrating to the United States. I also know it's queer, and I know that a lot of people have enjoyed it. So I'm going to be listening to it. And I think that since it's set at least mostly in the Caribbean, from my understanding, it would cover the one non-US UK book. The final prompt for the Blackathon is Nnedi Okorafor, a disabled character embarks on a journey, or a book written by a disabled author. For that, I will be reading Breaking the Walls of Silence, AIDS and Women in a New York State Maximum Security Prison, written by the members of the ACE program of Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. This is actually one of the books on my HIV and AIDS topical TBR. Now, this has multiple authors, as it is by the entirety of ACE. However, ACE is, at least from the pictures, seem to be mostly comprised of women of color. And the reason that I picked up this book was because I was looking for books about Katrina Haslip, who was a Black woman with HIV that really heavily advocated for women with HIV and people in prisons with HIV. If you haven't heard of Katrina Haslip, definitely look her up. I'll see if I can find a good article or something to link about her. But she basically taught herself law while she was in prison, put together this organization in order to fight for the people in prison with HIV. One of the big things that she fought for both in prison and once she got out was changing the definition of AIDS. because at the time, the only people who were being studied at all were cis white men. So there were a lot of symptoms that AFAB people were showing but weren't on the official criteria, which impacted their care. Anyways, she's a badass, and I'm going to be reading the book about the group that she put together. Hopefully I'll get through all of it. It is pretty chunky. If nothing else, I'll definitely be starting it. Now, there is a group read that goes along with the Blackathon as well, but I don't know if I'm going to be getting to it, just because I have a lot of other stuff on my list. Next, I can talk about the Black Lit Challenge, which was put together by Seiji from Artisan Geek. And this year, there aren't specific prompts, but rather there are specific criteria that your books can fit. There's a whole list. You can check her video out for more information. But the goal is to get 4 points. So you get 1 point for each thing on the list that a book covers, and an additional point for each different country you read. Now, of course, some of the books that I've talked about could also be covered in the Black Lit Challenge. I talked about 2 nonfiction books, one of which was written by a disabled person, and then another one that had LGBT themes, and then another point because there was one country outside of the US. But on top of that, I have a couple of other books that I'd like to read. I would like to read Hitting a Straight Lick with a Crooked Stick by Zora Neale Hurston. I've technically already started this as an audiobook. I've read through kind of the front matter and the introduction that talks more about Zora Neale Hurston and each of the short stories. And then I've listened through the first short story, but most of it I'll end up reading next month. This is just a collection of all of the short stories that she's written. And this would be included in the Blacklit Challenge because it is a classic. The other book that I would like to read for the Blacklit Challenge is Purpose of Power, How We Come Together When We Fall Apart by Alicia Garza. Alicia Garza is one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, and this is her memoir. Now I'll talk about the books that I'll be reading for VaLITines. VaLITines is a readathon put together by Kate from Chapter Kate, and it's basically just to celebrate literature and the bookish community. A lot of the books that I've already mentioned cover various prompts on here, so I won't go into all of those, but I will talk about the books that I haven't mentioned yet. For the Black Future Month prompt, you're supposed to read an Afrofuturistic book, and for that I will be listening to War Girls by Tochi Onybuchi. This is also the pick for the Climate Fiction Book Club, which recently started, so definitely check them out. I'm really excited for all of the books that they've got on their lineup, and I'm glad that this one was available through Libby. Next, I have a book that will fit heels over head. What is this? No, Heels Overhead is a Boys Like Girls song. The prompt for the VaLITines is Head Over Heels, which is to find an author whose first name is longer than their last name. And for this, I will be continuing on a book that I've already talked about being in the middle of reading, and that is Sontag by Benjamin Moser. Next, I have a book that fits a few prompts. I will be reading the first volume of Komi Can't Communicate, which is the first in a manga series. So this fits commitment issues to continue or start a series, love language, which is to read a translated work, and long distance, a book that is set in a country that you are not from. Next, I will be reading a book for gifts, a book that was given as a gift. And I'm fudging this just a little bit because this is an arc, which might have not been like a gift on purpose, but it was something that was given to me for free. So, I'm going to be reading Detransition Baby. This is one that I've really wanted to read that I just haven't gotten into yet. I first heard Sage from Sage Reads talk about it, so I'll be excited to get into that. The final 2 books that I'm going to be reading actually fit Valentine's Day, which is interesting. The first one of those is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is a Bookturnet favorite. I haven't read it, but I've been needing to. I really want to get it before One Last Stop comes out because that one seems super great. So I figure I ought to read their other book first, even though they're not related. But this also fits a few VaLITines prompts. Opposites Attract, a genre or format you don't usually read. I don't really read a lot of genre romance. I think I read 2 last year, and they were both novellas. So this is different. It also fits the prompt My Sunshine, which is to read a lighthearted book. And then it also fits First Date, new to you author. This also fits the Buzzwordathon. The Buzzwordathon has a different prompt each month, and this month's prompt was colors. So read a book with colors in the title. Then the final book that I have on this TBR covers the prompt Long-Term Relationship, a book that's been on your TBR for too long. And that is This Is How You Lose the Time War. I honestly have no idea how I have not read this yet. I feel like it hasn't been on my physical TBR for that long, but it has been on my radar for a while, and this seems exactly like the kind of book that I would love. It's very character-driven. There's a lot of yearning. It just seems really great. I've heard tons and tons of good stuff about this, and even like the bad stuff that I've heard about it, the critiques that people have of it make it sound like I would like to read it. So I'm super stoked for this. This is probably the fiction book that I'm gonna end up finishing first this month. So those are my February reading plans. If you've read any of these, definitely let me know what you thought about them. And if you're participating in any sort of readathons this month, let me know about it down in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye.